It's time for Straight on the Point with Jesse T. from some undisclosed location somewhere in the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Jesse T.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Yes, it's me, live in person. The Jesse T Show is back on the air and everywhere from the community to the world. Good to have you along, and I made it into this weather. It was just absolutely gorgeous from where I was. I was like 85 miles away, like 85 minutes ago. I was going 100 miles an hour. I ducked around two CHP officers, driving down the lane I shouldn't be driving down because nobody in California uses those diamond lanes. I mean, that's something we got to talk about. Those diamond lanes, they are not being used.
$500 million on the diamond lane for the 405?
Yes, and there's like 3 cars going down it. And there's 90,000 cars parked in a parking lot on the 405. Go figure that smartness out. Hey, my special guest today is David Hernandez. Let me tell you a little bit about David Hernandez. He's running for lieutenant governor of the state of California. He's been a community activist for a long time. David and I go back probably maybe about 10 years working in the northeast part of the San Fernando Valley. Mm-hmm. He's touched a lot of issues and a lot of concerns from a lot of different districts and throughout the city of Los Angeles. And he's got a lot of important things that he has to do up there in Sacramento because we got to start cleaning house, my friend. Somewhere we got to start cleaning house. So we're going to get into a lot of things here. David, good to have you along with us.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here with somebody that, from the area, grew up in the Valley.
That's right, man. Homegrown, baby. 2 years in Chicago, and we moved here.
Uh-huh. Now, wait. Now, you went to what
high school?
Oh, you what? When did you graduate?
1978.
Wow, well...
You were a little time before
me.
I
graduated in 66.
Coach Richardson, the wrestling coach.
We just had our 50-year reunion.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, mine's coming up.
Yeah.
50, oh, Lord help
Polly
me.
Parrots, here we are.
Yeah, the Polly Parrots.
That always sounded kind of lame, but, now it's a proud Polly Parrot.
Yes, but we kicked butt in the athletic department. I know more during my time there. Uh-huh. We went to city and baseball and football, basketball, wrestling, tennis. They even had gymnastics when I was there.
You look at the sports figures that came from that school now. Back then... I was kind of, borderline. I really wasn't involved in anything.
Right.
Used to hang out at the rail.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, back then they used to call us greasers.
Yeah. Oh.
Because I had a big waterfall hair and ruffled shirt.
When you were trying to look like Richie Valley?
There we go. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of, borderline. I saw West Side Story, and, I was Bernardo.
Oh, there you go. Man, can you dance like Bernardo?
Heck no. I mean, we used to have the school dances in the gym, and I'd be, standing against the wall looking too cool to go dance.
Yeah, well, that's I was this guy in the middle making a fool of myself. That's what I did.
Don't tell me you were belonged to the cheerleading squad, or
oh yes, I was a cheerleader. Yes, I kicked my legs really high. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, actually, I played football, baseball, wrestling, the whole 9 yards. We had a great time. Poly was a great school. I really appreciate Poly High School at that time. It was one of the best academic schools in the city of Los Angeles, and certainly one of the most diverse in terms of ethnic quality. We had the perfect percentage of every group of that time in the 1970s. It was magnificent, and there was never any problems. And then, of course, LA Unified School District decided to change things in the mid to late 1970s, and they started doing all that busing from all over the city, uprooting families and kids and everywhere.
Well, being from the Valley, you remember when I started Poly, I was on crutches because we used to go water skiing at Hanson Dam.
Oh, I remember water skiing. I wasn't big enough to do that. We were playing the White Sands Beach right there, and going to Pop's Back Lake.
Oh yeah,
by Orkey.
Well, that's where you used to go fishing.
Right.
And I jumped out of the boat and I stepped on something and just tore up the bottom of my foot.
That was not an unusual thing. That happened to me too. I had a piece of glass stuck in my foot, so that wasn't unusual.
Yeah. So I graduated from Madison, and here I'm going to Poly on crutches. It's kind of hard to look cool on crutches, even for a greaser.
Yeah, that's right. I'm telling you, man. Well, you've come a long way, my friend. You served in the United States military.
Well, I got tired of people telling me what to do out of high school, so I went and joined the Navy.
Well, that was smart. I mean, at least you were on a ship that's kind of clean, hopefully, unless you were on the USS Kearsarge, which my father says in Korea, the Kearsarge was filled full of, it was a carrier, and it was known as the dumpster of carriers because it was the most filthy carrier. They could never get it clean. They could tent it. They could never get it clean. He was on the Lexington, flying off the Lexington in Korea. And so, hey, at least you got to not have to wallow around in the cold and the mud.
Well, yeah, we did that in Olongapo City in the Philippines. We went on R&R.
Yeah.
But, I right out of high school, I went in the Navy, boot camp in San Diego, and then got sent to a naval air station in Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, right.
So I was there for about 8 months. I got assigned to an air squadron. We did a 9-month Westpac cruise off the coast of Vietnam. And here I was, 19 years old, going all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, Spain, Italy.
Especially in the Navy.
Yeah. And, it was really something. There's 5,000 guys on a carrier. I worked on the flight deck. And, and it was really something. And, I grew up in North Hollywood. So except for that 4-year stint, being in the Navy and then doing a Mediterranean cruise where I got to go, to Italy and Spain and all, that was really good because it gave me a perspective of how other people live as well at that at that young age. And I came back to North Hollywood and basically been here ever since.
And you've been jumping into the community over the years. I mean, you've done everything: cleaned up streets, painted off graffiti, helped people in need, fixed parks. Lights, gone down to City Hall and stomped your feet and banged your hand. I mean, you've done it all.
Well, but there are so many good people out there doing that stuff. I mean, I know the work that you've done with human trafficking and different things like that. There are so many good individuals, dedicated organizations, and part of why I stay involved in the political realm is because unless you're politically connected, regardless of how vital the work that you do, how good the work is, you seem to always be, looking for loose change in the cushions in the couch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not right because not only does the nonprofit or the service provider suffer, but their clients suffer because they don't get that service. But, a lot of people, they get involved in different things because of their life experiences. When I got out of the Navy, I went to Valley College. I was working at the police garage over at Foothill and then over at Van Nuys.
Right.
And I was a garage attendant and basically, I washed cars and helped the mechanics do the tune-ups. And at night, when I was working morning watch, when the officers would go up in the hills and Foothill and, leave the radios on and take a nap and the batteries would be dead, they'd have to call me to come and give them a jump start.
That's funny.
But
that's when they could get lost. Yeah. They can't get lost anymore.
Yeah, no. So I was going to Valley College at night, and when I was getting the GI Bill, and it was really something because as a veteran, I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
Working for the city. I bought a house in North Hollywood, and I never forgot that. And so when the opportunity presented itself to volunteer on the foundation board at Mission College in Sylmar, it was like absolutely I would go and do that. And so I spent 5 years on that board, raising money for individuals who are changing careers or coming from their primary education. And I served as president for a year. None of that was really planned as being a resume, for some political office. It was just something that I had received benefit from, and I saw that other people could as well. Same thing. I sat on a board, Youth Services Network, and these were boys ages 8 through 18 who were abused and abandoned, who had been in the child services with the county. I mean, some of them from being infants. And what we did was we provided homes for them, and we provided education and psychological care and so many different things. And what I saw was a lot of these boys acted out because of the environment that where they came from. Right. And so while they were looked at as problem
kids,
kids, and that many people within the communities did not want homes like this. So I saw that yes, there was a need. It needed to be structured. You are bringing young people with challenges, behavioral challenges, into the neighborhood. You actually want them to be part of the neighborhood. That's not a reason for not allowing those homes to take place. So there's a lot of different life experiences. I mean, one of the big ones, and really why I got involved in politics, My daughter was 22 at the time, and she came home and said, "Dad, I really feel bad. I'm hurting. I can barely move." And I'm thinking, contempt prior to investigation. Right away, I'm saying you shouldn't be partying all night.
Yes.
Come home at a decent hour.
Yes.
And they said, "No, Dad, you don't understand. There's something wrong." And so we went to the emergency room at Olive View Hospital in Sylmar.
Right. Was that the old hospital before the earthquake?
No. This was
the new one.
It was the new one.
Yeah.
Everyone who's going to talk about health care or treatment needs to go spend some time in an emergency room.
Especially a county place.
Especially a county one, and observe what takes place.
It's amazing.
And turned out my daughter was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
At a young age.
At 20. That's
Wow.
right about that age. And so I spent, I'm still in that, the next 25 years in county facilities, whether she had her knees replaced, her hips replaced, she's had 3 strokes, we had to go through all of the process of getting all of the medications. And, and now she has 2 sons. She's pretty active. I mean, she still has, the physical
pains.
Well, that one, but the pains are pretty much subsided because all of the new drugs that have come out. But a lot of the physical problems with her hands and different things like that. And what really got my attention is I worked with a young man who was diagnosed with AIDS when he was like 60 days clean and sober. And not many people, this was back 1988, when the AIDS epidemic was really ravishing.
I remember when I was working at a radio station in San Bernardino, Riverside at KGGI, doing all nights, and I used to pick up magazines because we didn't have the internet or anything, so I'd read magazines and stuff during the show. And Time Magazine had the first article about AIDS in 1981, 82, and they traced it to San Francisco. They had this whole thing. That scared the daylights out of me. I remember I called my mother at like 3 in the morning because I was working the all-night shift, and I said, "Mom, you're not going to have any kids." That's it. You're not having any kids.
And so this young man came to me because he had been homeless. He'd been living in an abandoned car, and he said, "Can you help me?"
Right.
Now, I'm not a doctor. I hadn't had that experience. And I basically said, what can I do to help you? And he said, "You know what? I've been on the street. People look at me with disgust and pity, and I'm going to die. And when I do, I would like people to look at me with respect and dignity." And so I worked with him for 2 years, taking him to the community clinics, taking him to APLA, taking him into his doctor's appointments. And one of the clinics there in North Hollywood, it used to be on Tahunga and Magnolia across from the library there, where I used to take him, was closing. And the reason they were closing is because they said that, they didn't have funding. Now, that's exact week that they were closing because of a lack of funding. The county gave Disney $3.5 million for the concert hall.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, wait a minute, $3.5 million for Mickey Mouse or maintain a community clinic
that saves lives.
Open. And I thought, the mouse doesn't need the money. They got plenty of money. And so I went to the County Board of Supervisors meeting, just to say, something's not right here. And so it was things like that. And then when I saw the dedication of not only the doctors in the county service, whether it was at Olive View, our first big surgeries were at Rancho Los Amigos, where during convalescent, the Torrance, the general hospital there.
Right, that was a big one.
There are so many dedicated individuals working within the county healthcare system. And, if some of the best surgeons are there because they're dealing with, gunshots. They're dealing with trauma on a daily basis. So,
it's a mass unit every day.
Yeah. So I've always been, because of that, it was personal that I do. What can I do to be supportive of these different organizations or these different facilities? And so it was a lot of the things that have happened have been by a personal experience that either involved me directly and my family or friends, and so the same thing was happening in a lot of other different areas that I've never expected to get involved in.
So this is how you came to politics, defending issues that just didn't make sense. Going up against and saying, "Look, that's not right. It's lopsided. It shouldn't be like that."
Well,
and this has been a fight that you've been fighting for what, 25 years now?
Well,
20 years?
Yeah, maybe not quite that long, but it feels that long. I mean, and some things like, well,
let me ask you
okay.
this: what's going on with the city of Los Angeles? I mean, why is this problem with infrastructure and the complete destruction of our roads and our highways and the trash buildup on every street corner and every alleyway? I mean, especially this trash issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's trash everywhere. I have seen more trash in the last 10 years, 5 years, collect on places in Los Angeles City, and I get around a lot. What is going on? I thought we had a city trash service that picked this up. What's happening with that, David?
Well, the Department of Sanitation, and like any other department, they're really overworked. They're understaffed. I mean, you're looking back in 2009 when they had budget cuts across the board. I mean, there's only so many individuals. There's only so many equipment. But there was also, and I know the LA Times did a really in-depth investigative story on this. And what they found, especially in the poor neighborhoods, especially like South Los Angeles or some of the areas that calls for bulky item pickup were not being responded to, or they were being put off for months and months. And so that was being allowed to build up. I mean, there were some alleyways where you could not, a vehicle could not get through because of all of the trash. In New York, they had the broken window theory.
Right.
And so, if you leave it, let a window stay broken, next there's going to be another one. There's going to be graffiti and trash and crime. Right. L.A., I call it the blighted city syndrome. It's the exact opposite. That if you see an area, and we'll take the Valley Plaza as an example.
The Valley Plaza.
We take the Valley Plaza, and you see an area start to kind of go down.
This was an area, folks, that was the mainstay of shopping for decades in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. It had May Company. It had originally May Company, then turns into Macy's. It had
Ice Chalet and all of them all there.
It had the Ice Capades there. It had all those great stores in there and great places to eat. And then in the last 15 to 20 years, it has completely fallen into, like you say, blight. Well,
what happened is that if an area becomes blighted, and that is an official title.
They actually have that.
And so if you let it become blighted, you can't do it now, but this is what they've been doing the past 20 years, is that you can create a community redevelopment zone. And so the zone comes under the control of the Community Redevelopment Agency, or at least it could until it was disbanded.
Right.
Now, what they can do is then they can sell bonds on the bond market without approval of the voters, they become their own entity.
Right.
And with the money that they make from selling the bonds, then they hire politically connected developers to come in and buy out the rest of the businesses, get everything shut down, and then go ahead and build this up. Now, the tax rate of the money going to the city is frozen at the blighted level.
Well, the other issue is politically connected developers.
Big bucks in blight. There's big bucks in blight, poverty,
homelessness
crime,
now,
and
too.
homelessness. Well, and we saw that. And so what would happen is they would come in. I mean, and this is not just in poor areas. This is,
Right.
Was it in not too far from here? Is it Playa Vista or Playa del Rey?
Yeah, right down here.
I mean, some of these
Playa Vista.
When Bill Rosenthal was elected to the city council, and that was his area, he found out that this has been a CRA area for over 20 years.
Yeah, Howard Hughes, the old aircraft plant. Was.
Yeah, so all of this building, all the money went to the CRA, not to the city. So that's why they didn't have money for fire and police and different programs, because all this money was going into the CRA so they could pay the bond money back, the loans back, and then they could also to keep that machine going.
You see, that's the thing. The public doesn't understand the complexity of what you're talking about. They don't understand the problems at hand and the issues that are really not in the public eye. It's behind the closed door, around the corner, these issues. And things are let go and continue for reasons that the public doesn't get, but the political aspect and the money aspect of it is what's really driving these things to get worse, worse, and worse. And then somebody comes in at some point and makes hundreds of millions of dollars that the public doesn't even understand or have access to in any way.
Well, and the tragedy is, okay, so you see an area built up with office buildings and malls. Well, that tax money doesn't go to the city. It goes now. And what happened? It got so out of hand that a couple of years ago, the governor stepped in and said, "You know what? We're in a financial crisis, and look at all this big pot of money sitting in the CRA." They came in there and scooped it all up. And so what happened, like with the Valley Plaza, where that all of those stores, with the exception of maybe just a couple of last holdouts that didn't sell.
Gold's Gym.
Gold's Gym, the Sizzler, the movie theater.
The movie theater, that's it.
And so what happened was there was no money to finish it. Now, fortunately, they finally sold the Valley Plaza.
Yeah, it's going to be a farmer's market type thing. I think the group out of Fairfax area.
Oh yeah, and that was initially the goal. I used to be on.
Well, you used to work on that. Well, you worked on the trash issue tremendously.
Yeah,
that was something that you put a lot of time and hours into, and you put a lot of time into that section that you're talking about because it really needed the help. I really needed it. You had that new high school put next door, and then the whole place falls apart.
Well, and then when we look at that, and that was part of the that north of Victory Boulevard, where it used to be Hughes Market, and all the way down. They were going to put the high school south of Victory, but they worked out a deal with LAUSD, and they put it right. I think they took out like 200 single-family homes.
They did. They
took where that school
streets
went.
Out.
Yeah.
2 or 3 streets. I used to work that area a lot in real estate. And this kind of stuff is happening all around the city of Los Angeles and the county.
Well, all over the state. I mean, Los Angeles doesn't have the corner market on people benefiting from these backroom deals and special interest, and and not that it's not legal, but you can really question whether or not it's moral.
When you got 50,000 homeless people running around the county and the city, you've got homeless encampments that the police won't even go into now, and they tell the citizens living around there, don't go in there, don't go in there. They catch on fire. You have human feces and all the filth and destruction that creates. Then you have the gang problem, and you have the prostitution and human trafficking problem, and you have the drug problem, and then you have the destruction of the streets in Los Angeles, and then you have the billionaires rebuilding Hollywood and downtown LA, and Garcetti saying, "Oh, the city is going great, and we just did so many wonderful things, and we've got money in the bank, and we're doing great." And I go to that and I shake my head, and it amazes me that they can say that when they just go down the street and around the corner, and nothing has changed in 20 years.
Well, you look at things like the condition of the roads. They just passed Measure M. This was to be, the valley was going to finally get its fair share.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna do this, and the first thing to do is they start skimming off the top.
I railed against Measure M on here.
We knew the money, even if we could get just a portion of it, but they're already skimming it off the top. But what is really behind? If you expand the blighted city syndrome to other agendas, it's like, well, if you make driving so miserable and you can't move, then you're going to get on the bus or ride a bike.
No, you do what I do. You drive down the friggin' Diamond Lane, and you're looking. It's worth a $340 ticket to get somewhere in time where you might make $500. You know?
But you see that with this Safe Streets initiative, where. Although I heard here that Councilmember Bonin has rethought his ways and is going to take out that bicycle lane and reopen up the second lane.
Oh, isn't that great?
But you look at Pacoima on Van Nuys Boulevard.
They got that bike lane going down there, and who rides a bike in Pacoima? First off,
well, I mean, I've seen a couple of 40-year-old individual.
A couple.
But
I see them all the time at about 2:00 in the morning when I'm going home. Yeah.
But what happens is people get frustrated in that traffic, and then they cut
use the
through.
bike lane.
They cut through the residential neighborhoods, and they're speeding, and they're angry.
I argued against the bike lane. That whole initiative, I argued here that's going to cause mayhem, accidents, death. It's going to cause injury. It's going to cause all kinds of things.
Well, and that you brought that up about the injury, and I have nothing against bicycles. I rode bicycles. I used to ride from North Hollywood to Amsterdam.
Yes.
My kids had bicycles. I have one of family members that works at a bicycle shop. But what about, because there are so many people riding bicycles now, and that there are a lot of pedestrians being injured in bicycle collisions.
Yeah.
What do you think about if someone is, say, over the age of 18 and they're riding a bicycle on a public street or sidewalk, that they should at least have liability insurance?
Well, you have to have insurance for everything else.
Well, I mean, in case there's an accident where my mother's 89 on a walker and a cane, so she gets hit by a bicyclist coming down the sidewalk. That's a life-changing injury
For her, absolutely.
So
She's not recovering.
What about, if we want to encourage you to drive safely, but in case accidents do happen, maybe you should have liability insurance.
Well, here's the problem with this. These things are great to have, but when they get passed, they never get followed up on. No one ever is accountable for hurting themselves or somebody else on the bicycle. And what happens, because there's no police involvement anymore, the police can't police bicycle lanes. They have a hard enough time doing what they're doing already because of 47 and 57
and AB 109.
And AB 109. Why should they even sit? Why don't they go back up there to the mountains and turn the radios on so somebody else can charge the batteries? Because they don't want to put themselves in jeopardy. In fact, we had a police officer who's now an actor in here. Yesterday we were talking acting stuff, but we gotten talking about police stuff, and he said, when I was coming on the force 25 years ago, you had a pride to become a policeman. You wanted to do something, and you had the ability to do something. But today, with the way the bureaucracy is and these screaming left-wing, lunatic, liberal, progressive piglets, and that's what I call them. You didn't. I did. That's all right. I say what I want to because I'm me, Jesse T. But here's the point. The point is you've got cops out there that are more concerned about their $1 million pensions, credit union funds, and keeping their job and their overtime than doing anything, because they don't want to jeopardize getting their hands slapped by Internal Affairs and Chief Charlie Beck, who doesn't know what the heck he's doing.
Well, before I came here,
I'm sorry, I rail on.
No,
things.
that's fine. Today, I for the first time, I attended the LA County Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Committee.
Right. Okay.
Which is a very
I've been there.
A relatively new committee, and it was interesting because I could, I've been to a lot of other commission meetings like that where there's a lot more structure. They're still getting used how to deal with a rowdy crowd.
Right.
But one of there was a lawsuit that was filed because some individuals or groups want to make the police officers' information public. If if someone is involved in an arrest and they're going to defend their client, they want to be able to put the officer on under the microscope. And so there's a list.
They can already do that, David. They do that with depositions and all of that. They don't need to put their names public.
There is a list, and it's called the Brady list.
Yeah.
And so if there's, no matter how small, if there's any disciplinary action, the officer goes on the list.
Yeah.
And so you have someone that, and I was looking at all the things that would qualify them for being on the list, like, doing somebody a favor or immoral behavior or any number of things.
Right.
So they end up on a list with officers that, we just heard, the sex scandal with the Explorer program. I mean, so there's no, very minor offenses to very severe. They're all on the same list.
Well, I can understand heinous crimes of that nature being dealt with in a different way in terms of the public information out there. But for example, when you're a police officer and somebody complains about you, And the first thing that they do is they take you off the street if you're a patrolman, and they put you behind a desk. Internal Affairs comes and looks at the issue. If your captain decides that it needs to have that look, and then from that point on, you sit and wait till it's adjudicated in some way. And if you're found not guilty, then they put you back on the job and out you go. But that incident goes in your jacket.
Sure. Now, and
you'll never get
No.
the promotions later on down the line.
what we saw,
And he didn't do anything wrong.
what we saw with Prop 47,
Right.
is that the criminal element, and we're talking about the habitual criminals.
Right.
I'm not talking about, just someone who, got caught with a bag of marijuana, is that they're not stupid.
No, they know the system better than most.
They know the system. They know that what Prop 47, what it did was it reduced these felonies to misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm.
They knew the overcrowding now at the county jail, that if they commit a misdemeanor, you could have a 90-day sentence and serve 3 days maybe,
Yep.
or they're just going to process you through. But they also know that if you keep filing complaints against police officers, valid or not, they have to be investigated.
Every single complaint.
So you have a group of people. You've got, 450 gangs in Los Angeles, something like about 85,000 gang members.
You're right. Those numbers
And
are right.
and they're not stupid. And so they know that this becomes a tool. And so all of a sudden, okay, well, there is an aggregate of complaints against this police officer. They've been unfounded, but we still have to investigate them. And then all of a sudden, there's a shadow. Well, if he had not done anything wrong, why are there so many complaints? And it's like when we were talking about why individuals are not looking to go into law enforcement today,
Right.
because of the environment, because of the danger level has really been elevated. And so things like Prop 47 really need to be reformed. I brought together members of the Sheriff's Department, LAPD, Burbank PD, the District Attorney's Office, and said, okay, what can we do? I mean, it was passed by the voters, but now we have life experience to see what has happened. What can we do to address that? It doesn't have to be something major. It could be maybe if someone has a series of crimes, rather than having them just be one individual misdemeanor at a time, where nothing's going to happen to them, is that to be able to combine them and to be able to make provisions within 47.
The specifics like that need to be really looked at, because the way the proposition reads, it's a blanket umbrella proposition, and it's never going to function right. It's just going to kick criminals back out on the street. And 57 follows it just a few years after that, which is even worse, because you talk about felons now being dropped down to a lesser charge,
Right.
And it's retroactive to some degree.
Well, and that's what happened with 47.
And-
all of those felonies became misdemeanors,
Yep.
retroactive,
Yep.
and so all of a sudden you have about 25,000 people coming out of state prison.
Yeah, and what do you
into
think
your
they're gonna
neighborhood.
do? What are they going to do?
Well,
Picnics
they're
in the
coming
park?
out of prison. They have no job. They have no place to live.
So what are they going to do?
So and so the correlation between the expansion of the homeless count in Los Angeles and Prop 47, it's just a natural consequence that even individuals that were in favor of some of the strong points in 47 with regards to rehabilitation, with some of the crimes that they were there for, are the first to say there was nothing in place to take up that amount of people. And so here they are, homeless. If I
They're
see,
going to go back doing the same things that they did before, and
especially
they're
if
going to be
it's
better
now,
at it.
especially if it's now a misdemeanor.
And they're going to be better at it because they were just in jail for a period of time, and that's like going to the state pen, the university, the state pen, and learning better criminal activity while you're in jail, because you get more connected up that way. And they come out and they just do the same thing.
All I have to, walk down the street, break the side window of your car, steal something out of there that's worth maybe $20, and that is under the limit. And each car is a separate misdemeanor.
They don't couple them together anymore. I know that. It's crazy. So now we know that the city of Los Angeles has a lot of issues, and it continues to, in my opinion, not address those issues with clarity. The city council, the mayor, the police chief, the word is still out on Sheriff McDonald. The word's still out on him. But we know that a lot of these issues are being skirted under the table. They're being dragged on, pushed away.
Well, especially if we're going to get the Olympics here, we can't we can't have a reality check of what the city really looks like. You have to look for about the second story up. You can't look down at ground level.
Right. No, you can't look down at ground level because you'll be completely, you won't want to come here. The old cliche was that on Rose Bowl day, they'd have the game at the Rose Bowl, and that would be broadcast around the world and the nation. And then our population would go up because everybody on the East Coast was freezing.
Coming out here, look at the great weather. And
right. Yeah. Well, why don't you just come on down to some parts of central Los Angeles and parts that have completely been forgotten. I mean, completely forgotten in that case. So we have a lot of city problems and we have a lot of county problems. But the state, and what you're running for is to be the assistant governor, the state of California. The state, I mean, we've got sanctuary cities. We got people wanting to have a sanctuary state. We've got immigration coming, not so much from Central America and Mexico, because that illegal immigration has really subsided quite a bit since President Trump and the AG Sessions has come into play. But we still have a lot of immigration problems coming from the Orient, from China, from Vietnam. A lot of that is coming illegally. And India, down through Canada, and British Columbia, a lot of illegal, and of course the terrorists trying to come over here. But at the state level, I mean, as assistant governor, what's your platform? What are some of the key things that you're going to fight for?
Well, I mean, number one, my wife and I live in Valley Village, which is in the San Fernando Valley, city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles. We're residents of the state of California.
No, that's
more important. We're citizens of the United States, and the laws of the United States do not end at the California border. The rights that we have as American citizens do not end at the California border, and that whether or not the politicians in Sacramento choose to acknowledge that or choose to respect that what I have to bring to Sacramento first is that we are American citizens first, California residents second. And so laws dealing with the Second Amendment, laws dealing with immigration, laws dealing with, any issue. If there is a right that I'm being deprived of because I'm a resident of California, then I need to at least speak about it. Most people have given up in California. They think that this is somehow, okay, here we are on the left coast, and then you have maybe New York on the East Coast. And so, I mean, you got people talking about breaking up California.
Yeah, north and south.
North and south. I mean, Jefferson and, you know what? My family lives in Southern California. We ain't breaking up nothing. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You turn on a spigot and you allow fresh water to come in, and sooner or later that old dirty water is going to flow out, and then you're going to end up with a clean bath and a clean baby. So uphold the U.S. Constitution and uphold the state constitution. You brought up sanctuary state. There's a lot of people running for lieutenant governor.
Right.
My main opponent is Kevin DeLeon, and Kevin is pushing SB 54.
Right.
And so
tell the folks what SB 54 is.
That is to make California a sanctuary state, which would prohibit local municipalities from working with the federal government when it comes to immigration.
And most of his family was illegal here, and he got him citizenship a lot faster than anybody else.
Well, no, it's worse than that because, I didn't plan on doing this. I've run for offices in the past. I've basically retired. I'm 60. I'll be 69 in September. But I'm listening to people who are running for office, and then I hear Kevin get up and speak in support of SB 54, and he talks about that his motivation is because of the new president, that individuals with criminal records or that could be charged with crimes are going to be deported. Well, for the past 20 years, the whole immigration debate, these same individuals were saying, well, if someone has not committed any crimes, they pay their taxes, blah, 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 then we should have immigration, basically amnesty. Now it's like no one gets deported. And so when he's bringing up why 54 is needed, he talks about his family members who have fraudulent identification.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah, they broke
last
the law.
I checked, identity theft is a big problem.
Gee?
Now,
Really?
so here you have someone who has sworn to uphold the state constitution, knowing that identity theft is ongoing, and is not stepping up. That's not a public servant. That's a co-conspirator. That's aiding and abetting. And the fact that it's his personal family makes it a very self-serving bill on his part. I sat down with
It's hypocrisy, too, and I'll tell you why. Because the last few years of President Obama's presidency, immigration was changing. The illegal immigration problem was getting less and less and less because of the tough action against employers in terms of the type of identification that they had to provide. And it was harder to get a job. It was harder to keep people that didn't have the proper identification.
Not to mention the hundreds of thousands of individuals that he had deported.
Right. I was going to say he had a deportation policy even before President Trump.
Yeah. No, Trump did not come up with it.
It's hypocrisy on De Leon's problem that he talks about immigration and ties it to Trump when in reality
he was there.
Obama was already doing it.
And he didn't say nothing. And, I sat down with a young Hispanic mother, single mother. She had a son. He was doing really good in school. He was really applying himself. She's working, the job best she can, just getting by. But because of his grades and her limited income, he qualified for a scholarship. They were just so excited.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get a letter saying the scholarship has been rescinded because the school found out that under her Social Security number, there was a whole new income reported in another state.
Someone got her
Someone
number.
took her Social Security number. And that young man lost that scholarship. And what the school said was, look, that's not our problem. You have to deal with Social Security. You have to deal with the federal government. And so when Kevin De Leon gets up there and says, oh, the identity that's not a big deal. he said, well, this isn't the Russians hacking in this identity theft. And then he goes on to say that most individuals who are in the country illegally have some form of false identification. Well, since when is that okay? Since when is that kid and that single mother, it's okay for them to be victims, but individuals that come here and then break other laws like that, we have to give them a pass. And if you question that, you're you're a racist, or with me, they call me bandito.
Yeah.
That's a new term.
Today, yeah, that's a new term. Today, if you are anti anything on the left, you're immediately branded as a racist.
Racist, homophobe,
everything,
bigoted,
discrimination, all of this immediately comes out. And that's one of the fighting and battle techniques that is used
but that
against
doesn't
the
work
conservative
anymore.
side.
What they're finding out is it doesn't work anymore. Because people no longer is there this white guilt syndrome if you call me a name, I'm going to shut up and I'm not going to say anything.
Someone wants to call me a racist, they can call me a racist any day. I don't really care. I'm going to speak my mind and say what I say the way I say it. That's just how I'm going to do it. I'm going to speak confidently towards all people having a fair chance.
Well, and that's why you see the violence is escalating at a lot of these marches and a lot of these protests, is because the calling people's names is not deterring people from speaking up. So now there's a lot of violence, whether it's Berkeley, whether I first saw it in Costa Mesa, in San Jose, and was really troubling for me was especially in San Jose, was watching individuals that went to a Trump rally being physically assaulted, and the police officers not engaging because they were directed by politicians not to engage. They didn't want it to escalate. So, I mean,
let's move to this issue.
Okay.
The big rainstorm that we had here for a good solid 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest rainstorm of my lifetime living in California. Every dam, every reservoir, every canal, every flood channel flooded and loaded to the max right now with the burn off and the melting off of all that snow that was dropped. with trillions of gallons of fresh water being dumped into the Pacific Ocean.
Going right at the
because we have nowhere to put it, nowhere to house it, nowhere to keep it, nowhere to send it for farms or nothing. Nothing has been done in 25, maybe 30 years towards that infrastructure with collecting fresh water that is given to us as a gift from God. I mean, with what we got, but yet, El Stupido Jerry Brown, that's what I call him, he goes to Florida and begs President Trump for infrastructure money for the Orville Dam, and Trump said, no way. What about the sanctuary money you gave to the illegals and all the money you gave to this?
Well, you know,
why does the state keep wasting money illogically and not investing money into the future of the state to make it prosperous?
Jesse,
what is going on?
If you solve a problem, what will the candidates have to run on next time? If you solve a problem, how are you going to get another? Remember the bond measure for water was like $4 billion. That passed. That was going to be for infrastructure, for groundwater.
I remember.
And all of a sudden, I started attending meetings because these different groups were talking about, well, these poor Latino communities are park poor, so we need that money to build parks. Now, I'm all for parks.
That's just massaging the voter.
And so all of a sudden, so you have billions of dollars to be able to capture that rainwater, to be able to utilize it.
Like feed the farms out in the central California so that they can grow food for us to eat?
No, you have to keep those wetlands. You got to keep that water flowing so the little delta smelt doesn't dry up and disappear. And so... But if you look behind every issue, there's a financial incentive, whether it's water, whether it's the animal shelters, whether there's 70,000 dogs and cats being slaughtered, to supply rendering companies with raw product that the city pays them to come and pick up.
Really?
Yeah, and it's something. It's like this isn't just happening in this little Los Angeles. This is happening all over the state. You know, and that's and looking at the support and the different things that I've been involved with. Usually I've always come in looking for the financial, what's the hook? Who's making money off of this? They were going to build an expanded Asian elephant exhibit at the LA Zoo. And so I thought, well, let's see. It's going to be $46 million, and they're cutting money from all these different little services.
And yet we have 60,000 homeless people that are running around the streets where 80% of them want to stay on the streets, and 10% of them want to get off, and 10% of them are just really chemically destroyed.
Well, you know, I went there, and I went there with all of the animal rights groups, and I you know, when I go somewhere, I mean, there's things I know I don't know, and so I like to listen, and what I heard was really, I mean, growing up in Los Angeles, I never knew that I was almost like 12 to 14 elephants had died at the zoo. And the reason they died is because of the confined area, because of their weight. The dirt gets compacted harder than concrete. They get infections in their ankles, and then it goes into their bloodstream, and they die. Wow. And so, while people were there saying, well, elephants don't belong in zoos, all this, I was coming and say, well, why are you going to spend $46 million when there are so many other projects? But in listening to these animal rights groups, I turn around, and next thing I know, I'm standing in front of the LA Zoo with a picture of Gita, the elephant that the veterinarians for the zoo just gave a stable bill of health, along with other animal rights activists that have pictures of the dead elephants, and it's not fake news, as some people would say.
Right.
And during our protests, Gita sits down and dies at the zoo because she wasn't stable. And in working with several different groups, we were able to get one elephant moved to an elephant sanctuary paws in Northern California. So those are not typical, whether it's working with people with AIDS.
Yeah, but you know, look at David. Okay, fine.
It's about money. Follow the money.
I get it. But why should we look at? The city could use $46 million in education funds. The city could use $46 million in infrastructure. The state could use $46 million to fix the bridge that halfway through Monterey that fell off, and they can't fix that road. The state could use $46 million to solve problems at the border. The state could use $46 million for the CHP. I mean, there could be a lot of money that $46 million. Those
$1 million add up.
Listen, let's ship the friggin' elephants out of the LA Zoo. Let's sell them to New York or Chicago or London. And we don't need no friggin' elephants. What we need is $46 million.
You have people that were willing to pay to cover all the costs of transport, and Billy was transported. Or rather, not Billy, but another elephant, the African elephant, was transported, right. And people paid for it. And so, no matter what, so like what I'm saying is, this isn't just happening here. And so, setting priorities has got to be a priority. And so, yeah, ensuring that people in California enjoy their inalienable rights here. It doesn't stop there, but also looking at reforming Prop 47, looking at, there's a big push now to separate Proposition 13 between commercial and residential.
I know there is. I'm fighting that.
And those that want to divide it.
Proposition 13, folks, was back down in 1978. It was the Jarvis Act, and Jarvis worked real hard on this. And prior to the Proposition 13, each property was taxed individually. They actually had tax assessors that would go out to people's houses and knock on the door and assess your house, the improvements, and you could be paying more than your neighbor could be paying less. And it was not fair, because on one street you'd have 10 different tax structures being paid just because you decided to improve your house.
Well, as property value went up, and say you're retired, and all of a sudden you're on a fixed income, and your property tax is going through the roof. So what happened is people were losing their homes.
Right, and they passed
mainly seniors.
They passed the Jarvis Act, the Tax Reform Act of 78, became Proposition 13, and that tied the taxation to the actual sales price and across the board. And ever since that's been happening, the state has been trying to erode themselves.
They always point to all of their financial problems is because of Prop 13. And the reality is, there are challenges within Proposition 13 when it comes to, say, corporations and everything like that. However, there was an effort to reform and address those challenges 2 years ago in Sacramento.
Nobody did anything about it.
But why would you do anything about it? Because if you reform it, then you're going to lose your argument to break it up.
Well, why not? You just add 25 cents to the gas tax like Governor Brown did without any vote or anything, and now we're getting taxed 25 cents supposed to go for state infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not going to go for state infrastructure.
It's going to go for the choo-choo train.
The high-speed rail, which is the high-speed rail that's going to be actually low-speed most of the time, because it's never going to go 200 miles an hour through the Los Angeles National Forest. Are you kidding me? And when it hits San Fernando Road? Come on now. So what is your take on the high-speed rail? And Dianne Feinstein, I call her Dr. Frankenstein, and Mr. and Mrs. Frankenstein. Listen, I call everybody has a nickname with me. What can I tell you? But, what do you think about that? Her husband wins the bid. Her husband, a contractor. Gee.
Well, that's not a conflict of interest.
No, is it really? Maybe France and England and Japan and China know a little more about high-speed rails than America. Maybe there are companies that vied for that, but he never even built a railroad track.
Well, so, it's
so what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, it was doomed from the start, because we knew it was never going to fulfill the things that it said it was going to do. And it sounded very good, like many things that are presented to the voters. But, it just doesn't pan out. And so realizing that it was not going to pan out, now it isn't the time to dump more money into it. And especially now in this environment where California is basically saying it's seceding from the United States because they don't have to listen to the current president. Well, the bulk of the funding for that high-speed rail was supposed to come from the federal government. Good luck with that.
Yeah, they were supposed to 3 to 1 for every dollar was raised here.
So if Kevin DeLeon is successful in making California a sanctuary state, and then Sessions, if he's still the Attorney General, steps in and follows through and says, you know what, we're going to cut off funding for these states that want to be sanctuary states. whether it's the money going to law enforcement. I mean, so it was bad from the start, and the funding isn't there. So all of these different schemes with the increase in the gasoline tax and the vehicle registration, and quite frankly, that SB1 to get it out of committee.
Yeah. Tell them about SB1.
That's the gasoline tax and the voter registration.
Right.
You can't just blame Democrats.
Voter registration is tied.
Or the vehicle registration rather.
Right.
But
that's right.
In order to get it out of committee, you had one Republican vote for it, Anthony Cannella, who is the senator from Northern California. Well, Anthony Cannella has pulled papers to run for lieutenant governor. So I want everybody to remember that. And so I am a Republican, and I'm going to hold him accountable for that.
So he helped pass that tax that I'm paying for.
Yeah, and so that is a tax on the working poor.
Cannella,
Anthony Cannella. and to get it, I
got a nickname for him, Mr. Cannoli.
So you had Governor Brown offer him like $400 million in goodies for his district, and he sold us all out.
Yeah, but look we passed recreational marijuana, the voters did, and we're all going to be high in 2018. And the city of Los Angeles, I was talking to the controller, Ron Galperin, right? They're looking at projections in 2018 of $50 million extra dollars in tax revenue from recreational marijuana use. So that's going to happen.
Well, except the city of LA is going to be a sanctuary city. Last I checked, marijuana is a Class 1 drug with the feds. And so if the feds say they're going to enforce the law, you as a business owner, are you going to put your marijuana money in the bank where it's going to be confiscated by the federal government? I don't think so. I think people better rethink their rhetoric, follow the law, work within the guidelines. Obama was, and Bush also, they weren't really enforcing the Class 1.
They weren't enforcing it at all.
But neither
was Clinton.
You get your hairs all messed up and calling the president all these names and passing all these laws. You're really opening the people of the state of California open for some really severe consequences. Whether you're for marijuana or not, whether you're for the high-speed rail or not.
Record. I voted for that, and I think it's going to help if you use Colorado, Oregon, and Washington as the litmus test, and the money that the state has acquiring now in their infrastructure that they're fixing, finally repairing, and they have some extra funds. My only concern is California being about 40 million citizens, and growing, is that the graft and the corruption and the collusion and all of that, that money is going to disappear, just like all the other money that is raised.
Well, when we were talking about my friend with AIDS, and he was using medical marijuana, and I saw the benefit of it, at a personal level. So I was supportive of medical marijuana, but Proposition 64, though, the people behind it were Monsanto.
Yeah, the GMO companies.
I mean, these big conglomerates, they're getting into the growth industry.
Of course, because they want to taint the marijuana cigarettes with a nicotine substance, so you get addicted to it.
And so I have friends that I've worked with that are very supportive of recreational use of marijuana that were adamantly opposed to this proposition because they saw what was happening is that it was the George Soroses, the Monsantos that were going into this area and trying to take control of the marijuana industry here in California.
So we're running out of time, David. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for hours. I want to have you back as the campaign goes on. When does the vote come up for the new governor?
That'll be vote by mail ballots come out in 10 months, so that's June 5th. You can go to my website, David Hernandez for Lieutenant Governor. I'm on Facebook, all the usual stuff. And, we're not going to agree on every issue, but if we find an issue that we agree upon, then we can work together regardless of where your stand is on some other issue.
Right, absolutely. And some of the more important things that you want to cover and that you want to do as Lieutenant Governor are?
Well, like I said, reforming Prop 47, protecting Proposition 13, and re-examining SB 277, which was the mandatory vaccine bill that was passed by the Democrats in Sacramento being supported by Big Pharma, which mandates every child going to school, public or private, has to meet the CDC schedule of 69 doses.
I think that's way too much injections in a child. They don't need it. They just need to eat good food, drink good water, and have no stress in their life and have a loving family.
Well, the best advocate for a child is a parent.
Yep.
And a parent working with a pediatrician should determine the schedule on which the child gets the vaccinations.
David Hernandez, everybody. David Hernandez running for lieutenant governor of the state of California. Check him out on his website. Real fast, what it is?
David Hernandez for lieutenantgovernor.com.
Help him out. Make a contribution. Do whatever needs to be done the right way. Let's get this man in office. He's got lots of great ideas. He's been around the scene for a long time. He knows the city, the county, the state real well. Travels up and down the state. Gets involved. Been a volunteer activist for many, many years. And I appreciate you coming in and talking this stuff, Dave. I really appreciate that a lot, man.
Thank you, Jess.
Great job. Hey, AVTV Live in the Digital Broadcasting TV Network. Millions of viewers and listeners all around the world, on the air and everywhere, from the community to the world, on YouTube Live. Of course, Power Voices and YouTube Live, Jesse Terrero, Facebook.com. Jesse Terrero, Straight on the Point, YouTube Live. Another one, Win-Win Inc., Snapchat live stream, Periscope. Jesse Terrero in the world according to Terrero, Straight on the Point. See ya. The Brown Beauty's off duty. Boom.